Hey everybody, I'm really glad you found Suncrest Messages. I do hope you'll take a minute to subscribe to either our podcast or our YouTube channel. And you can also download the Suncrest app. There's great stuff there that goes far beyond these messages. Either way, I hope that the next 30 minutes helps you integrate faith with your life. Enjoy.
So, my name is Dan, and I'm a hypocrite. I think it's best just go ahead and get that out on the table. I want you to like me, but I really want you to respect me. And so sometimes I try to appear better than I am. Smarter, wiser, more kind, more loving, more honorable, better than I really am. About a month ago, my wife Dora and I were out in the front yard and we were arguing about something. It was really important, like grass or weeds or water. I can't remember exactly what it was. But right then, April Hornbuckle rode by on her bicycle. And she waved and said, "Hi, Pastor Dan." And I went, "Well, hello, how are you?" I just flipped like that. Why did I do that? Because I didn't want April to see me as an irritable person. I wanted April to see me as kind, pleasant, and wonderfully understanding to my spouse. It's natural, and frankly, it's usually a good thing when we put effort into making a good impression. Let's be clear, I'm not saying, I don't believe that brushing your teeth or taking a shower, even taking 2 showers during the summer, or wearing makeup or shaving makes you a hypocrite. There are some judgment calls when we get into certain cosmetic procedures, but that's for another message that Greg will teach someday, maybe. Maybe not. If I was your life coach, you would hear me say that it's a good idea to get a haircut before an interview. It's wonderful to dress up for a special event. If you're going out on a first date, making a good impression doesn't make you a hypocrite. When I asked Dora out the first time we went to dinner, and the place and the food and what I said, what I did, all these things were designed to encourage her to say yes to a second date. And it worked because our second date was the very next day. But because I didn't want to scare her away, I did not tell her everything about me. All the bad and all the ugly things about me. I did not reveal all of that stuff, all of my story that first evening. It would have been too much, too soon. And so bit by bit, in time, I was more transparent. I remember one day, a few months later, I remember nervously risking a substantial amount when I said to her, "Dora, I think it's time for us to take our relationship to the next level." And I reached into my pocket and I pulled out this picture. Yeah, that's from high school. It's a picture. And I think you would agree with me, it was a wise decision on my part to not break that out on our first date. To wait a little while was probably a good choice. Because, come on, it's a little bit rough. That picture is rough. Not showing that picture the first date didn't make me a hypocrite. It just made me a good decision maker. So, yeah, good. It's off the screen. That's good. But let me suggest to you that you and I are uber accustomed to not just making good impressions, but to hypocrisy. It's all around us all the time. We live in a national context, a cultural dynamic where people in positions of power specialize in using world events to hypocritically pursue their own agendas. Commercial ads attach feel-good images, cute puppies and beautiful outdoor vistas with overwhelming happiness and endless smiles, and then they weave that in with using their product. Why? To sell their product. People present themselves as more caring, more passionate, more idealistic, more honest than they really are as they posture and maneuver and limit access and gain more and more influence and more wealth for themselves. The cloud of hypocrisy extends from Washington out to Hollywood, and it's thick. Actually, it's thick just about everywhere, including my front yard. But in the kingdom of heaven, Jesus takes over all power and all authority. Manipulation and pretense do not exist in the person and the character of Jesus. And Jesus gives access to the sinful, the weak, and the powerless. He turns everything upside down. No matter where you cut him, he bleeds truth, transparency, authenticity. No agendas, no mixed motives. Did you know that even if you're skeptical about Jesus, even if you don't believe in Jesus, even if you have serious doubts that it's possible that he was and is who he said that he was and is, God. Did you know that you and Jesus agree about something really big? You and Jesus both don't like hypocrisy. Actually, we're going to see this morning that Jesus gets mad about hypocrisy. He gets hot when the cloud gets thick. Jesus was loving and kind and full of grace, but he also got angry. In this message series, we've been discovering a more informed, a more complete understanding of who Jesus is by finding out what made him mad. You can learn a lot about someone by finding out what makes them angry. And today we add hypocrisy getting in the way to Jesus' list. Now, before we move on, there are a couple things that may be apparent to all of us, but I don't want to assume. The first one is this. While Jesus gets angry about hypocrisy, he loves hypocrites. His love for every one of us is not based on our performance, including some theoretical mastery over every hint of the sin of hypocrisy. It's not that he will only love us if we eradicate this hypocrisy from our lives. Jesus loves us because he loves us. And that's really good news, because here's the second thing that I don't want just to assume, so I'm going to say it. We are all guilty of hypocrisy. To varying degrees, we are all hypocrites. And it's really important to own that, or the rest of this message won't be helpful to you. Alcoholics Anonymous figured this out decades ago, so groups require everyone to introduce themselves with their name and the qualifier, I'm an alcoholic. And so right now, would you set yourself up to receive this message in a helpful way by verbalizing that truth? Would you say, my name is Dan, and I'm a hypocrite? Just fill it in with your name. Let's say that together. 1, 2, 3. My name is, and I'm a hypocrite. Yeah. That confession is a great beginning for us. AA uses a slogan that says, you're only as sick as your secrets. And that's one of the problems with hypocrisy. It leads us into keeping secrets. And as long as we're still hiding, as long as we're still living in those secrets, nothing changes. So let's get specific. What is hypocrisy? The word comes from the theater, and it literally means to wear a mask, something we're all getting very much accustomed to in this season, aren't we? As a hypocrite, I hide from you who I really am, and I present another face, what I believe to be, what I feel is a preferred face in that situation or in front of that person. Pretense, deception, self-delusion, all these things become a part of the hypocrisy experience as I get really skillful at acting out a part, acting out a role. Sometimes it seems innocent enough to us. Julie asked me, does this dress make me look fat? And I say what? Oh, no. Sometimes being nice can be the thing that leads us into hypocrisy. But when we ease in, it's so hard to not keep going. And before we know it, our hypocrisy shapes us in toxic ways. We get used to wearing masks. That's exactly what happened to the religious leaders, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees in Jesus' day. Would you listen for the anger in his voice as Jesus addresses these religious people in Matthew's account of Jesus' life? Matthew, an eyewitness to these conversations 2,000 years ago, tells us that Jesus said, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you've neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." Jesus is saying, you're technical about your financial giving, down to the percentage of spices in your cabinets at home, but you're missing the point. Your giving should be connected to justice and mercy and faithfulness, to changing lives. You should give financially, but your giving should come from the heart to make a difference for people that I love. Earlier in the scriptures, there's a beautiful story from the life of David, and we're granted a glimpse into who God is in that story. The prophet Samuel is about to pick David, at that time a young boy, to be the future king. And Samuel says, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Jesus continues in Matthew's description. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence." Jesus is saying contamination on the inside leads to infection and death, no matter how polished the outside may appear. That's the festering effect of hypocrisy. I agree 100% with my friend Tim, the author of our recommended reading for this series, when he writes, "Our hearts are where the real issue lies. How we appear on the outside is hugely irrelevant compared to what's inside." Jesus says, "Woe to you, you hypocrites! You're like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you're full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Inside, putrid corpses. Outside, I'm making it all look good." In this chapter, Jesus calls these religious leaders snakes, vipers, blind guides, blind fools. He calls them hypocrites 6 times. Do you sense a wee bit of anger from Jesus? Without a doubt, hypocrisy made Jesus hot. And Matthew's narrative makes that crystal clear to us. But why is it that hypocrisy elicits so much strong emotion from Jesus? Why is hypocrisy so bad? Why did hypocrisy make Jesus so mad? Jesus' response to hypocrisy is more intense than any other reaction from Jesus that we read about in the scriptures. I believe hypocrisy was such a huge deal to Jesus for a handful of reasons. And we're going to talk about 3 of those today. Reason number 1. Why was this such a big deal? Because hypocrisy causes blindness. It causes blindness. Physical blindness is caused by macular degeneration 40% of the time. Diabetes, 10% of the time. Cataracts, 10% of the time. Glaucoma, 10% of the time. And physical blindness is horrible. But the kind of blindness that we're talking about is even more devastating than that, and it is caused by hypocrisy 100% of the time. It's a blindness that leaves me in such a condition that I can't see myself. I can't see my sin. What's more, I can't envision Jesus' modeling of something better, truly better. Something better than my hiding and my pretending and my secrets. Hypocrisy leaves me in the dark about reality. I can't see things clearly, and that compromises all of my relationships. It compromises my ability to interact with all aspects of life. So in very real and powerful ways, I stumble around in life, bumping into people and bumping into objects, causing damage everywhere that I go. Why is hypocrisy so bad? The second reason, because it leads to self-destruction. It's so exhausting to be a hypocrite. All the hiding and all the pretending and layering of lies upon lies, faking it. It's exhausting. And it saps your energy. And then in that weakened, tired state, just like Jesus describes, hypocrisy brings on infection from the inside out. Jesus used these two examples in what he was saying to the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. The examples of dirty dishes and putrid tombs. All the effort exerted on polishing the outside doesn't clean up the inside. And our souls get infected. Over time, infection and sickness spiral downward into death. The religious leaders in Jesus' original audience were dead inside, no heart. Long time since they had had pure motivations. They were still playing their roles like a high-functioning alcoholic. They were still teaching. They were still, quote, leading people in their religion, but they were dead inside. Maybe you can resonate with that. Maybe that's you right now. Hypocrisy possesses the power to destroy you from the inside out, incrementally. And because Jesus loves you, because he loves you so much, that makes him angry. He wants something so much better for you. He wants something so much better for me. The third reason why hypocrisy is so bad, why it made Jesus so mad, it's because hypocrisy prompts us to judge other people. When I'm a hypocrite, it tees me up to be judgy toward other people. Greg has already told us during this series a few times that Jesus was, in the scriptures, never mad at people far from God. It's not that Jesus never leads people far from God to change their lives. He speaks directly, but not angrily. And John 8 is a wonderful example that we've pointed to previously in this series, this encounter with this particular woman. I would encourage you, even if you were here and you already know what John 8 is about, go back and read that again and reflect on Jesus' encounter and his interaction with that woman. Every time in the scriptures, in contrast to that, when we see Jesus angry, he's angry with people who claim to follow God, but they weren't actually. Once in a while, I hear someone say, the church is full of hypocrites. And my reaction to that is, yep, that accusation is absolutely true. Those of us who follow Jesus, we're all hypocrites to some degree. In fact, I would go further than that. This is my opinion. It's not scientific research, so feel free to disagree with me. But I've observed that while church attenders are less inclined to commit murder or even to use God's name in a profane way, church attenders are actually a little bit more inclined to lie, a little bit more inclined to judge others than those who don't claim connection to Jesus. Over the course of 5 decades of my observations and life experience, interactions with people inside the church and outside the church, that's been my experience. None of us are sinless. But as followers of Jesus, we must pursue sinning less and less and less. To as full an extent as possible, we must pursue hypocrisy-free life. Because this is what's at stake. When we're hypocritical, people feel judged by us. And it gets in the way of their openness to Jesus. That's true today. It was true 2,000 years ago when Jesus was having this conversation with these religious leaders. Listen to what Jesus said. Woe to you, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves don't enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. When we get judgy, we slam the door in the face of those who might be trying to enter the kingdom of heaven. Our hypocrisy gets in the way, and that makes Jesus angry. I believe that Jesus is telling us hypocrisy and judging, more than anything else, shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. Hypocrisy and judging, more than anything else we could talk about today, shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. One way we mess up on this has to do with ranking sins. If you grew up Catholic, you might remember these two categories of sin. Mortal sins. These are sins marked by willful violation of God's law. And venial sins, or slight sins. Now, those categories are not in the scriptures, but whether Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, Reformed, or whatever, here's what people of faith tend to do. Here's what we tend to do. We organically, unofficially create two categories of sin in our minds. Serious sins. These happen to be the ways that other people come up short of God's direction, God's plan. And lesser sins, the way that I tend to come up short of God's direction and God's plans for my life. And people far from God tend to fall into the first category, these serious sins. Isn't that how it goes? It's pretty high level rationalization. So I believe it's really important to connect with the feelings of other people who are far from God, their feelings when we get judgy. And this is so huge, this is so important, but I could only come up with one good way for us to heighten our awareness on this, one way that I could think of. I think the best way to connect with those feelings in others is to remember a time when we felt judged in a hurtful way. Have you ever felt judged? On a scale of 1 to 10, have you ever been on the receiving end of 8s or 9s or 10s? I'm not talking about this weekend, like I'm a Cardinal fan and I could feel judged by a Cubs fan. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about 8s, 9s, and 10s. Can you remember how you felt? See, I think that you can use that feeling, your memory of that feeling, to motivate you to get less judgy with people who don't know Jesus yet. In 2007 and 2008, I felt judged often and with intensity, 8s and 9s, quite a bit. Because my marriage was failing and failed, and because it was very public, and because the details were kind of juicy for church attenders to talk about, it has been by far the season of my life when I felt most judged. Interestingly, through that whole season, not one time, not a single time that I can remember, did I ever feel judged by friends or neighbors outside of the church. Neighbors were wonderful. My friends were supportive. But people who professed to be close to God had varied reactions. And I felt 3 different reactions. The first one was very supportive. There were followers of Jesus who were absolutely gracious to me. And I felt nothing but genuine concern and support and love from them. Second response, though, the second reaction that I felt was awkwardness. There were some people, followers of Jesus, who just didn't know what to say. And they just didn't know what to say. And so Awkwardness isn't as good as grace, but it was understandable. But then there were some people who claimed to follow Jesus who assumed the absolute worst of me. They judged me. They got judgy. And it was hurtful to me, and in some cases it was hurtful to my 2 sons. And that last part made me really angry. They didn't know my whole story, but they acted as if they did. They acted as if their lesser sins paled in comparison to my assumed serious sins. And I would tell you, in 2020, I can't fully connect with, remember, feel the intensity of what I felt, whatever that was, 13 years ago. But I can remember enough that it's helpful. I suggest that what I felt, what you felt when you were judged, anger and an array of other emotions that accompany that anger, those feelings are a part of what Jesus feels when he encounters hypocrisy. What is more, it's what people who don't know Jesus yet feel and then mistakenly attach to Jesus. And that last part really makes Jesus angry. Can you hear as the doors of the kingdom of heaven are slamming shut in people's faces? I've prayed that our time together this morning would stir up our understanding that hypocrisy is horrific, and it makes Jesus angry, and it keeps people from entering the kingdom of heaven. And if you see all of that, if you can feel all of that, then here's the question that matters. What should we do? What should I do? I could give you a long answer, but the answer doesn't need to be long. I believe that my next step, your next step, is to be honest with God and 1 or 2 people about our hypocrisy. Would you shift all of your thoughts away right now from someone else's hypocrisy to your own? Ask yourself, what am I embarrassed about in my life? What am I ashamed of right now? Is there anything that I'm hiding? Is there a place in my life where I'm pretending, where I'm playing out a part? Something coming up? Would you invite Jesus to bring light into your blindness, your darkness? Right now, you could invite Jesus to bring life into that sickness that is gradually spiraling down towards death. Seriously, right now, in this instant, you could invite him to bring grace into your judginess. He wants to make all the difference in your relationships. Today, would you own your hypocrisy? See it. Look at it. Be honest about it. Talk with God about it. Talk with 1 or 2 people that you can trust about it. And then change. In the power of Jesus, sin less. Get judgy less often. Be a hypocrite way less frequently. As far as it depends on you, as far as it depends on me, let's open up the doors to those who are trying to enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's be used by God to introduce them to him. In his power, it's time to change.
Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.